Hi, it's Lucy here at Spitfire Audio, and today I am so excited to take you through the 2025 The Ton bundle, which is going to consist of Spitfire Swarms, Symphonic Motions, and Symphonic Extras. So you can get all three of them for £99, which is over 75% off. All three of these libraries were recorded at AIR Studios, so they blend together amazingly well, and also they sit beautifully on top of SSO and, of course, SSO Discover, which were also recorded at AIR Studios. It's not only incredible value for three really extensive libraries, but I think it works as the perfect sort of next step on. If you have SSO Discover and you want to just add some extras and kind of add a little bit of like versatility to your existing orchestral core, then this is just the ideal next step up. I am going to be taking you through a piece that I wrote with SSO, and then I'm going to show you the additional layers that I added using the libraries in the ton. And I really want to focus here on how professional and pro these sounds can make this kind of like core composition sound. So I've got this core composition, and I want to focus on and highlight how professional these instruments can make it sound, and just how the instruments in the ton this year just add that top layer of sparkle and finesse and professionalism that just exalts any orchestral library, but particularly SSO. So enough talking, let's get into the music. I am going to play you my SSO composition, and then we're going to break down the layers that I'll be adding. Okay, so there we go. I'm happy with it compositionally, but I think there are lots of areas for improvement, and there are lots of areas where sounds could be brought out, or they could be given more character, and they could be kind of individuated more with some layering. The main kind of ostinato and backbone of this piece that I've got with SSO is this kind of like driving bass ostinato. So I think it lacks realism, and I think it lacks that kind of like motor machine gun effect that I really want with a string ostinato. I have also got a viola playing eighth notes on top of it, like that. Enter Symphonic Motions. This is a rhythmic string library that is designed to solve this kind of problem in composition and problem in string arranging and MIDI orchestration, which is when you want the realism of repetitive rebowing, but with a kind of like strong, driven motor feel behind it. And essentially we have this grid interface here, which is inspired by the EMS VCS3 synthesizer interface. And you basically use it. You can see you've got all the rhythmic subdivisions here, and then different articulations, groupings, and you can use it to generate these complex kind of tempo synced rhythmic patterns. And you can get granular and kind of do it yourself and click around, and, you know, we have literally every subdivision and every single string articulation that's available in the instrument. My favorite way of starting out with this is with the randomizer. So we're going to pick an overlay. I'm going to go with spiccato, and then just click feeling lucky, and then you can just see what comes out. It's really nicely reactive to the mod wheel and to expression automation. And we also have every single string section kind of in one. So, you know, within kind of one go, you have the violins, you have your bass. And I love that you get this kind of like, you can play around with interesting like cross beats and subdivisions, because, you know, the bass there was playing in this kind of triplet feel. and the violins were playing quavers. And this is essentially my compositional process with this instrument. I play around with the randomizer, and then when I arrive at something that I really like, I get in there and I start to fine tune and start to kind of like sculpt it how I want. So it's such a good way of kind of imparting momentum and drive to a scene without scoring these really overpowering melodic ostinatos. Instead of kind of like busy, overwritten string lines, you get these kind of like kinetic beds of movement and texture that kind of subconsciously drive the sound forward. And it's a big sound as well. It's really perfect for cinematic media scoring. You have 22 violins and 12 cellos. It's enough to really kind of fill the space sonically and provide a big widescreen sound. So I'll just show you a couple of the different overlay techniques here. That was spiccato. I really like the pizzicato. So it's really nice. I love how you can combine different articulations and techniques. It also like breaks me out of my box a bit with string writing, because I sort of tend to develop habits, as we all do, and using the randomizer really just like throws new combinations and new ideas at me. Like just then kind of overlaying spiccato with pizzicato is not something I'd naturally reach for when composing, but it sounds pretty cool here. So in this instance, what I've got is Motions playing basically this overlay to the existing string scoring that I've got with SSO, but it just adds so much. I'll play them in conjunction so you can hear. Here's my bass and my viola. And then with Motions, and I'm bringing in kind of different notes here, and they're all happening in kind of like hit moments, so it kind of hides the attack a little bit and kind of blends them in, but just builds it nicely. And then I've got a few other layers of motions to build things towards this kind of like crescendo moment here. Under there, I've got I've automated the volume here just to really like bring it up and build it. I love using motions as a kind of subconscious way of building tension and expectation before a big moment of release or before a big kind of like climactic moment. And I've got this one going here as well. So that is Motions. That grid is so much more than just like a preset machine. It's really more of a compositional partner, and it's kind of a basis and a starting point, and it's been such a valuable tool in generating new ideas for me. So onto Swarms, which I think is just one of the most beautiful kind of textural layer building libraries there is. So Swarms has a combination of harp, marimba, and mandolin ensembles, kind of in like multitudes of players that you would never usually hear in any other setting, which makes it really special. So I think you have 9 harp players, for example, in the harp ensemble, which is a timbre and sound that you would just not experience anywhere else in any other orchestral library. So it really is special. So it's based on this kind of cloud technique, or pointillism, it was dubbed, which is when the players in the ensemble of each instrument play these short notes asynchronously and out of time to essentially create this kind of like wash of texture and colour. And yeah, I'd say it's the most kind of like genre agnostic textural instrument as well. Like it works in so many different contexts and so many different moods and styles. So here I've used the marimba swarm and the mandolin swarm to kind of create these like shimmering atmospheric beds underneath certain sections of the composition that I really wanted to add a bit of distinct timbre to rather than just orchestra. So, for example, under the intro where I have the string ostinato playing and now our lovely Motions playing, I've got the marimba swarm that kind of just subtly fades in and out. And then I use it again later. because the attack here, I just think it's, it has this kind of really nice like dropletty attack, and the sustains are so kind of natural and lovely. And they provide this living sustain, which is when you use the sustains, it's constantly changing and moving rather than being kind of synthetic and generated. So that's how it sounds. So it's so light and it's such a hidden layer, but I think it adds so much. And then I've also got the mandolin swarm here, and I am such a fan of the mandolin swarms because the mandolin is a favourite instrument of mine, but swarms really pulls it away from the kind of like folk world that it's known for. So we have here a beat sync tremolo, which is what I've used. And to really just kind of up the like washiness, I've got the Spitfire AIR Studios reverb here on Ascend, and I've just got it on the Hall. And obviously, because everything here is recorded at AIR, using the AIR Studios reverb feels right, and obviously it works really nicely. So I've just got that at like 100% on Ascend just to make it super washy. Okay, now in my composition, my main kind of melody is being played by the piano and the celeste in SSO. I wanted to play with kind of tonal ambiguity, but also creating like mood and, a sense of story without kind of like this very clear harmonic story, because I think that's something that I go to almost automatically sometimes. So I wanted to play with kind of melody telling the tale and melody changing the tonality, for example, because I've got these kind of like implied minor moments in this. Without kind of like changing the harmony, which is quite static thanks to the string ostinato and the string motions running underneath it. So just to remind you of that, I'm going to play you the melody again with SSO. And I've also got the harp. Playing this kind of like jaunty, mainly offbeat figure, mainly kind of syncopated rhythm here, because I had a dance in my head and because I wanted to create something kind of like, let's call it like, like dark nutcracker kind of like, the kind of slightly horror fantasy version of Nutcracker. I was thinking with motion in mind and thinking with dancers in mind, and I think that really rhythmically drove my writing, and using a library like Motions really helped to kind of support that and support the like rhythmic basis that this piece is kind of like rooted in. So honestly, this harp counter melody kind of just came to me organically, but then I was like, oh, this really works. Here's how it sounds with the melody. So it's accenting certain moments of the melody and then offsetting certain moments. I've got like an A and B phrase with the melody also. So I've got the like is kind of the A section, and then the B phrase that's kind of like the response in a way. But I wanted to be more offbeat than kind of like, a super clear call and response. It's just two kind of slightly wacky versions of the same melody. So I have used Symphonic Extras. I wanted to characterize the melody like composers do in character ballets with something extra. So I wanted this melody to be like the dance of someone. Here it's the Holly King. And I wanted to characterize it with a tambourine flavor that felt just like a little bit mythical and strange and offbeat. And I did this with the Aluphone and with a little bit of the steel drums as well. So, for context, Symphonic Extras is a collection of kind of auxiliary instruments from a symphonic orchestra that are often kind of missing from other orchestral libraries. So some standouts would be they've got an allophone, they've got the HG20, which is kind of like a waterphone variation. They've got steel drums, they've got some various percussive sounds, so untuned percussion and toys. And there's also a plucked piano sound, which is just gorgeous. It sounds almost like a string synth, but it definitely has this kind of like organic weightiness to it. So for me, I love adding a little bit of strangeness to my compositions, but keeping them kind of firmly rooted in the orchestral world and in the kind of realms of like familiarity and cohesiveness and togetherness. So that's why I love this library so much, because you can add so much flair and creativity whilst keeping things sounding orchestral, I suppose. It's like when you listen to, what comes to mind is like Ravel in the piano concerto, the concerto number 5. His use of kind of like toy percussion in that, it feels so kind of offbeat and strange and out of character for that era and style. And yet it kind of still feels very classic and works so well. And yeah, I think I'm really heavily inspired by that. So that's why I love Extras so much. So I've added it to the melody here, the allophone and the steel drums. And here's how it sounds. And I kind of just want to A/B this for you in the full mix. I've bounced the full mixes here so that you can hear the difference. So this is SSO Only. And here it is with everything. I think it's the Aluphone just really adds something. And I've quantized everything very tightly on the grid here because I really wanted the Celeste and Aluphone just to like become one. And yeah, it adds this kind of like cold metallic wateriness to the Celeste that I just absolutely love. I would say also a lot of the sounds I've used from Symphonic Extras, obviously I'm using them in a more kind of like festive, whimsical orchestral context, but they're all such good sounds for horror scoring, and I've also used them for that quite extensively because they just have this kind of atmosphericness that is really transferable. So I actually came up with the melodic idea for the strange middle section I'm about to play you because I was playing around with the plucked piano and I was just improvising and I was going like, ooh, and I kind of, my hand found the shape. And I was like, that could be kind of cool as like a weird like call and response. So the plucked piano kind of carries the tune there. So I also have the allophone accenting there. And I'm using the HG20 as a really, I mean, this just, I think for me, this is like what adds the most character to this piece. It's these little percussion flourishes that I've added. And then I've got it playing as a kind of like strange tonal layer with my woodwinds. I think that kind of like dun 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 is just like instantly festive. Who knows why? We all know why. I've got the brass doing something similar here. So there's a few areas in SSO that I just kind of want to shout out and highlight. One of them is I'm using the horns here to play this kind of like stacked moment. It's just so effective. There's something so gorgeous about the like double horn section, kind of playing stacked like that. I think it's really nice, and it's not technically like the most accurate orchestration. Here I split into 4 parts, but I really wanted that ending to just be so like brassy and weighty. And, you know, I've got that playing under my lovely Motions motor at the end. And I just want to play you the horns and Motions. Just to kind of highlight how things sound in conjunction. I think it's a combination of the fact that everything was recorded with the same finesse and quality at AIR Studios, you know, in the same place with the same kind of cutting edge techniques. But yeah, I think it's also that these were all sculpted with each other in mind, all of these instruments, and they were made in consideration of each other, but it just sounds so, so good on top of each other. I also want to briefly touch on this like little funny moment I have here, again in that middle section. And that's my little shout out to one of the kind of extended brass techniques in SSO, and it's this contra bass tuba kind of fall. There's so many of these kind of extended techniques. There's falls, rips, there's trills, there's multi-tongues, and they're all so expressive and so useful. I wanted to kind of create this like real like orchestral fall feeling. And I've just got the strings there playing these kind of like very emphatic hits. And then the ending, I'm going to play you now. This is where everything kind of comes together and everything kind of blends as one. And it's where I get kind of more harmonically explicit and distinct. So to mark the ending and to also mark some other moments where I wanted to really kind of like, yeah, add a little percussion, I've got some of the low drums from SSO going. So at the start of this video, I played you through the entire composition just using SSO and just kind of like my core and my bass. Now I want to play you everything. So I want to play you with SSO and then the things that I added with extras, swarms, and motions. And yeah, I think you'll really hear that kind of extra 10% of polish and professionalism that they bring to this. So here we go with... So there we go. So for less than £100, you can take your composition from sounding, you know, fab, but needing a little something to just incredibly professional, shiny and polished and finessed sounding, which I really think is very much worth it. So for £99, that's Swarms, Symphonic Extras and Symphonic Motions, which, yeah, for 75% off is, yeah, almost too good to be true. So definitely go check that out. And yeah, have fun experimenting and using this as a kind of additional layers to your bass orchestral library, whatever that may be. But I really recommend using this with SSO and SSO Discover, which is of course free to download. So 100% go check out SSO Discover if you haven't already, because these work so wonderfully with it. And as I said earlier, I think if you're a user of SSO Discover and you're loving it and you're really getting kind of familiar with it, this just feels like the perfect next step and the perfect next layer for you if you want to just add a little something extra. So there will be lots of other bundles also live on the site this holiday sale, so definitely go and check those out. And yeah, maybe treat yourself at the end of the year, a little holiday treat. So yeah, wishing you all a really lovely holidays and a lovely winter break. I hope it is restful and relaxing and festive and wonderful. And yeah, happy creating as well. Maybe you'll write something in the break. And if you compose something using the ton, this bundle, good luck and have fun. I think it is just wonderful. And I think it is just an incredible deal and it adds so much to your orchestral toolkit. So yeah, enjoy. So I really hope that you enjoyed listening to this little walkthrough and seeing how I made this composition and seeing what I added to it with the instruments included in this year's The Ton Bundle. So I will see you next time. Happy holidays. Goodbye.